I mean, it was a really impressive run from Caitlin Clark, but it's very interesting. No NBA game beat Caitlin Clark, period.
The sports world just got flipped upside down when ratings for 2024's most watched shows dropped. Everyone expected the NBA to dominate basketball viewership, but nobody saw this coming. Caitlin Clark's game beat everyone, and Angel Reese's reaction priceless. What's up, everyone? Today we're diving into some mind-blowing news that's shaking up the entire sports world. When the numbers for 2024's most watched broadcasts came out, something happened that nobody saw coming, and it's got Angel...
And look, supposedly LeBron James is this massive star. Supposedly the WNBA is this huge product. Supposedly A'ja Wilson and Angel Reese, boy, they captured the imagination of all sports fans. Except...
Reese talking. Interview 2. Let me break this down for you, because it's absolutely insane. Sportico just released their list of the top 100 most watched TV broadcasts in 2024. And guess what? Only one basketball game made the list. Not an NBA playoff game.
I saw this and I was like, oh, that is very interesting indeed. The NFL had 73 of the top 100 most watched broadcasts of 2024. Only basketball, college or pro, was a Caitlin Clark game. Yeah, that's right. So, let's look at this graphic. Number 76, the 76th highest rated and most watched show of the entire 2024 year was Caitlin Clark. That's the only basketball game.
Now let's talk about why this is such a big deal. We're not just talking about some random game that happened to get good ratings. This was the NCAA women's final between South Carolina and Iowa, and it landed at number 76 on the most watched broadcast list. That might not sound impressive.
Down here, that's the World Series. Yeah, that was the World Series. So, let's just look. Sportico's got the actual events up here. And it was the NCAA women's final between South Carolina and the Iowa.
This game pulled an 9 million viewers. Just let that sink in for a minute. That's not just a good number for women's basketball. That's a good number for any sport. And here's where it gets really interesting. This game didn't just compete with other basketball games. It beat the World Series. Yeah, you heard that right. A college women's basketball game drew more viewers than Yankees versus Dodgers in the World Series.
Guys, guess who was in that? Yeah, Caitlin Clark. That's right. 18.9 million viewers for that game, and a lot of us knew what that rating was already. But it was pretty remarkable to see this. I mean, down here is the World Series, Game 5, Yankees-Dodgers. All right, the two biggest brands in Major League Baseball, and it got beat by Caitlin Clark, 18 point.
Think about what that means. For a second, the Yankees and Dodgers are baseball's biggest brands. They've got huge fan bases, massive markets, and Shohei Ohtani was playing, but more people tuned in to watch Caitlin Clark and Iowa take on South Carolina. And if beating baseball's biggest event wasn't enough, check this out. The game also topped some NFL broadcasts. Now, if you know anything about TV ratings, you know the NFL is king. Nothing touches football when it comes to viewership, except apparently Caitlin Clark. Her game beat the Cowboys versus the Buccaneers in Sunday Night Football. The Cowboys are America's team. That's like beating Star Wars at the box office.
The NBA, by the way, is nowhere to be found on this at all. Damn. By the way, she even beat the SEC championship game. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. And some of the stuff on here that she ended up beating, pretty impressive. I mean, Summer Olympics, Sunday Night Football. She drew a higher rating
When these Angel Reese numbers dropped, Angel Reese couldn't contain herself. Now, we all know about the history between Reese and Clark. These two have had some epic battles on the court, some heated moments, and their rivalry has been one of the best things to happen to basketball in years. But even Reese had to acknowledge this achievement. You see, what makes this even more special is that it's not just about Caitlin Clark, it's about what this means for women's basketball as a whole. We're talking about a sport that's been fighting for recognition, fighting for viewers, fighting to be taken seriously, and now we've got concrete proof that people will tune in for great basketball regardless of who's playing.
She ruled when it came to basketball. She had the most watched basketball game of the entire 2024 season, and she drew bigger ratings than some NFL games, the SEC championship game between Georgia and Texas, and
Let's dig deeper into what made this game such a massive draw. First off, you had Caitlin Clark doing what she does best, playing basketball at a level that makes you question reality. We're talking about logo threes that would make Steph Curry proud, passes that seem impossible until they land perfectly in her teammates' hands, the kind of play that makes you text your friends saying, "Are you watching this?" But it wasn't just about the highlights. This game had everything you could want in a sporting event: drama, skill, stakes, and two teams playing their hearts out. South Carolina came in undefeated. Looking unstoppable, Iowa had Clark, the most electrifying player in college basketball. It was a perfect storm of storylines. Speaking of storylines, let's talk about Clark's journey to this moment. Recently, on the New Heights podcast with Travis and Jason Kelsey, she shared something pretty interesting about her path to Iowa. It turns out she almost went to Notre Dame, and when I say almost, I mean everyone, including her family, wanted her to go there. Think about that choice for a second. On one side, you've got Notre Dame, one of the most prestigious programs in college sports, the place where legends are made, the school that gave us Rudy, for crying out loud. Clark said it herself. As a kid, going to Notre Dame was the coolest thing you could imagine. But here's where the story gets good. Despite all the pressure, despite Notre Dame's tradition, and despite even her own family's wishes, Clark listened to her gut. She had this feeling that Iowa was where she needed to be. That's the kind of decision that either makes or breaks a career. Well, I think it's safe to say that decision worked out pretty well at Iowa. Clark didn't just succeed. She rewrote the record books. She became the all-time leading scorer in college basketball history, not women's basketball history, all college basketball history, men's and women's division. One doesn't matter. Nobody has ever scored more points than Caitlin Clark, and that's what makes these TV ratings even more significant. We're not just talking about someone who got lucky and had one big game. We're talking about a player who has consistently pushed the boundaries of what people thought was possible in basketball. The fact that she's drawing these kinds of numbers feels like the natural next step in her evolution as a game-changing athlete. Let's put these ratings in perspective. In the entire top 100 broadcast list, there's not a single NBA game. Think about that. The NBA has LeBron James, is arguably the most famous athlete on the planet. They've got Steph Curry, who revolutionized how basketball is played. They've got Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, and Kevin Durant, but none of their games made this list. Now, some people might try to explain this away. They might say it was just good timing or that it was because it was a championship game, but here's the thing, we've seen plenty of championship games before. What made this different was Clark. She's become appointment viewing, the kind of athlete who makes casual fans into die-hards and non-sports fans into believers. The ripple effects of this are already being felt across the sports world after this game. Clark got drafted first overall into the WNBA and promptly proceeded to break somewhere between 64 and 65 rookie records. That's not a typo. She literally broke more records in her rookie season than most players break in their entire careers. We're talking records for assists in a game, assists in a season, scoring records, you name it. It's like she walked into the WNBA and decided that all the previous benchmarks for what was possible just didn't apply to her. And you know what maybe they don't hear is what's really wild about all this. It's happening at a time when everyone's been talking about declining TV ratings we keep hearing about. how nobody watches live TV anymore, how streaming has changed everything, how attention spans are shorter. And then Clark comes along and proves that if you give people something truly special to watch, they'll tune in. Let's talk about the NFL numbers, because this is where things get really crazy. The NFL typically dominates television ratings like nothing else. We're talking about a league that usually claims 73 out of the top 100 broadcasts every year. That's not just dominant, that's total market control. So for Clark's game to break into that territory, that's like an indie movie outperforming Marvel at the box office. And it's not just about the numbers. If you watch the game, you know it delivered on every level. The atmosphere was electric, the players were making incredible plays, the crowd was going nuts. It had everything you want in a sporting event, but most importantly, it felt significant, like we were watching history being made in real time. Speaking of history, let's dig into some of these records. Clark broke in her rookie WNBA season because the numbers are just mind-blowing. She didn't just break records, she shattered them. Most assists in a game, broke it. Season assist record, demolished it. Rookie scoring records, please, those didn't stand a chance. What makes this even more impressive is how Clark's doing it. She's not just putting up empty stats, she's changing how the game is played. When she pulls up from the logo, that's not showing off. That's legitimate strategy. She's forcing defenses to guard her from the moment she crosses half court. That opens up the entire floor for her teammates. This is where Angel Reese's reaction becomes really interesting. Remember, Reese and Clark had some intense battles in college. Their rivalry was must-see TV. But when these ratings came out, Reese's response showed something important: recognition of what this means for the bigger picture. See, what Clark is doing isn't just about Clark anymore. It's about proving what's possible when she draws bigger ratings than the World Series. That's not just a win for her. It's a win for every athlete who's been told their sport doesn't draw enough viewers, doesn't make enough money, and isn't marketable enough. Let's break down that World Series comparison for a minute. The Yankees versus the Dodgers in the World Series used to be the pinnacle of American sports viewing. You've got baseball's two most storied franchises playing for the biggest prize in the sport. Add in stars like Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani, and you'd think that would be changing expectations is unbeatable, but Clark's game drew more viewers. This isn't just about basketball versus baseball, though. This is about